I found an alien in my prison cell. She thought I'd eat her. The cell smelled like rust, sweat, and the kind of regret that settles into your bones after a bad life decision. I sat on the metal bench. Calling it a bed was an insult to mattresses everywhere, and tried not to think about how long I'd be stuck here. A deep voice crackled from the intercom, its robotic tones devoid of sympathy. Prisoner intake complete. Cell block 3 is now in lockdown. The heavy doors groaned as they sealed shut. Wonderful, another day in humanity's least hospitable hotel, I sighed, rubbing a hand over my face and leaned back against the cold wall. Then the secondary door hissed open. I glanced up, expecting another poor soul who got tossed in here for jaywalking across interstellar trade routes. Instead, I saw her, tall, lean, blue-skinned. Her pointed ears twitched as she took in the cell's miserable conditions with a look of pure distaste. A mane of yellow hair cascaded over her armored shoulders, though parts of it were tied back in an intricate braid. The heavy metal cuffs on her wrists suggested she wasn't here voluntarily, and the sharp glare in her golden eyes made it clear she wasn't thrilled about our arrangement. She sized me up immediately, nostrils flaring, muscles tensed, and then, to my utter confusion, she bared her teeth and snapped, "Do not eat me, human." I blinked. I what? She pressed her back against the farthest wall, shoulders squared like a cornered animal. "I know your kind, you consume flesh. I am no prey animal." "Hold on, you think I stared at her, then burst out laughing. "Lady, I don't even like raw sushi. You think I'm going to start with you?" Her eyes narrowed, scanning me for any deception. Then she scoffed, though she didn't look entirely convinced. I sat up, holding out my hands in surrender. "I promise, no eating. I'm not into whatever it is you think humans do. My name's Ren, by the way." She hesitated, then with clear reluctance she muttered, "Ivil." "Well, Ivil, welcome to the galaxy's worst vacation spot. I hope you like bad food and personal space violations, because that's all we get." She didn't laugh. In fact, she looked at me like she was mentally calculating how many punches it would take to put me in a coma. I cleared my throat. "So, what are you in for?" She hesitated, shifting against the wall, and said nothing. "Ah, one of those types, right," I muttered, rubbing my face. "Well, if you're planning to kill me in my sleep, can you at least wait until after lunch? I'd like to go out with a full stomach." Still no laugh. Tough crowd. I sighed and leaned back, studying my new cellmate. The pointed ears, the armor, the rigid stance. She looked like some kind of warrior, unlike me, whose greatest accomplishment in a fight was not immediately getting knocked out. I glanced at her cuffs. "Those look uncomfortable." "They are." "Did the guards say how long you're in here?" She let out a quiet scoff. "If they spoke truth, I would not be here." "Same," I muttered. "So just to be clear, you don't have, like, venomous fangs or anything, right?" She rolled her eyes. "No." "Good, that would have made sharing a cell even more awkward." The silence stretched between us, heavy and uncertain. I had a feeling she still didn't trust me. Fair enough, since I was a complete stranger, but at least she wasn't trying to kill me yet. Then the food slot in the wall clattered open and 2 meal trays slid out. Ivil tensed, watching as I grabbed my tray. The standard prison ration was a lump of something gray, vaguely edible, and paired with a thin, bitter-tasting nutrient drink. I poked at it with my spoon. She watched intently. I took a bite, chewed, swallowed, did not die. She exhaled like she had just witnessed a miracle. Then she tentatively picked up her own tray. "See," I said, gesturing to my still-functioning body, "if anyone's getting eaten in here, it's us by this food." Ivil sniffed her portions suspiciously, then took a small, cautious bite. Her expression shifted from wary to horrified. "This is," she struggled to find the right word, "an abomination." I grinned. "Welcome to the human diet." She set the tray down like it personally insulted her ancestors. "This is meant to sustain you." Barely. I took another bite. "Honestly, I think they designed it just to keep us from rebelling. No energy for a riot when all you've got in your stomach is regret." She tilted her head slightly, as if processing the joke. Then, unexpectedly, she huffed a short, sharp breath that was almost a laugh. Progress. I gestured toward her. So what's your deal, you some kind of space knight? She straightened slightly. I am Zari. I waited for elaboration. It did not come. Right, I said, in Zari R. She frowned like I just asked her to explain the concept of breathing. Warriors. Ah, I gestured to her cuffs. Not great warriors, apparently. Her eyes flared, and for a brief moment I thought she was going to punch me. Instead, she simply muttered something under her breath, probably an alien curse. I leaned back, arms behind my head. Well, for what it's worth, I don't think you belong in here. She studied me, and you do. I shrugged. Apparently the interstellar authorities really don't like hitchhikers. She stared at me, then exhaled through her nose. Your laws are strange. Tell me about it. Another silence stretched between us, but this time it wasn't as tense. The intercom crackled again. Lights out in 5 minutes. Yvel glanced at the metal bench opposite mine, her designated sleeping area. She eyed it wearily. You'll get used to it, I said. Eventually, she scoffed, doubtful. I lay down, staring at the ceiling. Well, at least there's one bright side. She glanced at me, and that is. I grinned. If we're stuck here long enough, you'll have to admit I'm not going to eat you. She made a noise that was half frustration, half exhaustion, but as the lights dimmed, she muttered almost too quietly to hear, we shall see. The first morning in prison with an alien warrior as a roommate started about as well as you'd expect, with a near-death experience. I woke up to the feeling of something hovering too close to my face. My groggy brain barely had time to process that yes, I was still alive, and yes, I was still in a cell before my vision focused on her. Yvel was crouched beside my cot, staring at me with an intensity usually reserved for scientists studying bacteria under a microscope. Her golden eyes were sharp, calculating, and uncomfortably close. I yelped, flailing back against the wall. What the hell are you doing? She didn't even blink. You were still. I was sleeping. She nodded as if confirming a theory. I see, humans enter a hibernation-like state. I exhaled sharply, rubbing my temples. No, it's called sleep. Normal people do it without terrifying their cellmates. She straightened, unfazed by my outburst. I was ensuring you still breathed. Well, congrats, I'm alive. Now, if you don't mind, can we establish a rule about not creeping over my bed like a horror movie monster? She gave me a look like I had just told her not to drink water. It was necessary. No, it really wasn't. She shrugged, then turned toward her side of the cell, clearly finished with the conversation. I groaned, running a hand through my hair. This was going to be a long imprisonment. The food slot clattered open, delivering our morning meal, a tray of gray paste with a side of even grayer paste. I grabbed mine and plopped down on the bench. Yvel, however, eyed hers with outright disgust. I refuse, she muttered. I smirked. Oh, the mighty warrior is afraid of a little breakfast. This is not food. Technically, neither is fast food, but we eat it anyway. I took a bite, grimaced, and forced myself to swallow. Besides, it's not that bad once you accept that you'll never enjoy eating again. She studied my face for a moment, then picked up her spoon with extreme reluctance. She dipped it into the gray paste, lifted it to her mouth, and took a single cautious bite. The change in her expression was immediate. Her ears twitched, her eyes went wide. She clenched her jaw, swallowed, then set the spoon down like it was a weapon she had been forced to surrender. I grinned, good huff. She didn't answer, she simply stared at the tray as if contemplating the mistakes that led her to this moment. Then she muttered, this is an insult to all life. I burst out laughing. Welcome to human culinary standards. She shoved the tray aside. I would rather starve. Give it a few days, you'll break. She scoffed but said nothing. I had a feeling she'd hold out for as long as her pride allowed, which, judging by her sheer stubbornness, could be weeks. A lesson in language, or how to accidentally insult an alien. With nothing to do but wait for whatever passed as justice in an interstellar prison, I decided it was time to attempt real conversation. So, I said, stretching out on my bench, let's get to know each other. She glanced at me. Why? I blinked. Because we're stuck here, because we might as well not be total strangers, because I'm bored. She considered this, then nodded slowly. Progress. I sat up. All right, first question, how do I say hello in your language? She hesitated, then with an air of reluctant patience she said, Vesh. Vesh, I repeated. Nice. She gave a slight nod. Acceptable pronunciation. Okay, how about goodbye? She paused, then her lips twitched slightly as if suppressing amusement. Vesh. I frowned. Wait, it's the same word. She nodded. I squinted. So how do you tell the difference? Context. Right, I rubbed my chin. What about please and thank you? She tilted her head. We do not have words for those. I blinked. Wow, that explains a lot. She gave me a look that suggested I was the odd one. Why waste breath stating what should be understood? Because manners exist. She shrugged. Zari, do not beg. I laughed. It's not begging, it's just basic courtesy. She didn't look convinced. It is unnecessary. I smirked. Remind me to never take you to a fancy dinner. She frowned, clearly not understanding the joke. I waved it off. Never mind. Okay, last one. How do I say I am not a threat? She nodded as if approving my choice. El Morvs. I repeated it slowly. Ilar Morvevs. Her face instantly darkened. I froze. What did I say? She exhaled sharply, rubbing her temple. You just said I am weak and edible. My stomach dropped. Oh. There was a pause, then she smirked, actually smirked, and murmured, interesting confession. I groaned, dropping my face into my hands. I walked into that one. She actually laughed just once, low and amused, but it was there. Progress. Later that evening, as the dull hum of the prison's artificial lights buzzed above us, Ivil finally asked the question I'd been expecting. Do you intend to escape? I looked up from my bench. What, and leave all this luxury behind? She didn't even humor my sarcasm. You've thought of it, have you not? I sighed, sitting up. Of course, but this place is locked down tighter than a corporate vault. I'm not exactly mastermind material. She nodded slightly as if confirming something. You lack tactical skill. Wow, rude. She ignored me. Still, escape is necessary. I arched a brow. That's so. She leaned forward, her voice lowering. This is not a simple detention center. It is a holding place for political assets, those deemed inconvenient. I frowned. And you know this how? Her expression was unreadable. I know. I studied her. She wasn't just some random warrior who got caught in the wrong place. She knew things, something was coming, and judging by the way her golden eyes glowed faintly under the cell's dim lights, I had a feeling we didn't have much time. Still, I smirked. You know, if you really think we need to escape, maybe you should start being nicer to the guy who isn't going to eat you. She scoffed. Do not remind me. I grinned. Oh, trust me, I will. The thing about being locked in a prison cell with an alien warrior who may or may not be plotting an escape is that boredom becomes a serious problem. Unfortunately, boredom and I do not mix well. By the third day, I had gone through every form of entertainment I could think of. Counting the ceiling panels, 76, if you were wondering, making up tragic backstories for the mysterious stains on the floor, and even seeing how long I could hold my breath before I started hallucinating. Ivil, on the other hand, seemed perfectly content with silence. She sat on the opposite bench, sharpening a piece of metal she'd somehow managed to smuggle past the guards. It was about the size of a pocket knife, crudely shaped but clearly lethal. I eyed it wearily, so, planning on using that. She didn't look up. If necessary. On me. She glanced at me. If necessary. I sighed. You know, most people would say, of course not, Ren, we're best friends now. She resumed, sharpening, I am not most people. Yeah, I'm getting that. Silence settled between us again, saved for the soft scrape of metal against stone. I tapped my fingers against my knee. So, any updates on the escape plan? She exhaled, clearly irritated. An escape requires patience, observation, planning. Okay, but what if, hear me out, we just ran really, really fast? She shot me a look so full of disapproval, I almost felt my soul leave my body. I grinned. What, you don't think that'll work? No. You're sure? Yes. I sighed dramatically. Fine, plan B then. There is no plan B. There could be a plan B. There will not be. I exhaled through my nose. You are very stubborn. She smirked. Zari do not bend easily. Yeah, well, neither do I. She raised a brow. That is false. You are incredibly flexible. I frowned. Thanks. She tilted her head. It was not a compliment. Ouch. The escape begins, sort of. The prison lights flickered, a brief, almost imperceptible glitch in the power grid. Yvel noticed immediately. Her ears twitched and she turned toward the cell door, eyes narrowing. I sat up. What was that? She was already on her feet, moving toward the reinforced bars. A fluctuation in the energy field, brief but telling. Telling how? She glanced back at me, her golden eyes glinting. It means this facility is not as impenetrable as they claim. I stood. So you do have a plan? I have observations. Yeah, and those observations tell you. She hesitated, and finally she spoke. There is a pattern of vulnerability. The power cycle fluctuates at irregular intervals, but I suspect it is part of a larger system, one we can exploit. I nodded, pretending I understood half of what she was saying. Right, so what's the next step? She studied me for a moment, then, seemingly against her better judgment, sighed. We test the theory. Oh good, the dumbest distraction plan ever. Getting the guards' attention was the easy part. Convincing them to let their guard down, that was where things got tricky. Yvel had suggested a more subtle approach, something involving patience, deception, and tactical precision. I, on the other hand, had an entirely different idea. You're what? She hissed. I grinned. Watch and learn. Before she could stop me, I stumbled to the front of the cell, clutching my stomach. Guards, I groaned, doubling over. I think oh no, it's happening. The guard on duty, a bored-looking man with the charisma of a damp towel, barely glanced up. What? I let out a dramatic, pained gasp. Food poisoning, severe food poisoning. The guard sighed. From what? I pointed weakly at the tray. That thing you call breakfast. I think my organs are melting. The guard rolled his eyes. Nice try, inmate. I staggered against the bars, clutching my stomach. No, really, oh God, it's coming. The guard recoiled. Fine, hold on. He pressed a button on his wrist console, calling for backup. Yvel muttered something in her native language, probably a curse directed at me. A second guard entered, an irritated look on her face. What now? The first guard gestured at me. He's faking food poisoning. I collapsed dramatically to the floor. I wish I was faking. I can see through time. The female guard sighed. Should we get medical? The first guard snorted. No, just let him suffer. Great, that plan was a bust. Yvel exhaled through her nose, stepping up beside me. Enough, she muttered before turning to the guards. She straightened, adopting an air of quiet authority. You may wish to reconsider, she said smoothly. The female guard raised a brow. And why is that? Yvel smiled. It wasn't friendly. Because if he dies, who do you think the warden will blame? The guards exchanged glances. Yvel tilted her head. A human prisoner dead under your watch. She leaned in slightly. Tell me, what is the punishment for incompetence in this facility? The guard stiffened, and that was how I learned that Ivil was terrifyingly good at manipulation. The first guard cursed, "Fine, get medical down here." As soon as he turned his back, Ivil's fingers flicked toward the control panel on his wrist, lightning fast. A tiny device, a microchip barely visible, slipped into her palm. I nearly choked. She had just pickpocketed a trained officer. She stepped back, slipping the stolen chip into the sleeve of her armor, and gave me a single, satisfied nod. Holy hell, I had no idea what the chip did, but I was very excited to find out. Stealing a security chip from a guard was the easy part. Figuring out what to do with it, that was where things got complicated. Ivil sat on her bench, turning the tiny microchip between her fingers. Her golden eyes gleamed in the dim prison lights, her mind clearly working through 100 calculations at once. I, on the other hand, was working through a different set of calculations. I shifted on my cot. On a scale of 1 to "oh God, we're going to die," how illegal was that little stunt? She didn't look up. Very. I whistled, "Neat." She sighed, finally turning toward me. "This chip grants limited access to the guard network. With it, we may be able to unlock the cell doors." I nodded. "Right, and once we do that, we just stroll out of here, maybe grab a space taxi and ride off into the stars." She stared at me. "Are you always like this?" "Like what?" "An idiot." I gasped, pressing a hand to my chest. "Wow, hurtful." She rolled her eyes and returned her focus to the chip. "We must be careful. The moment we tamper with the system, the security AI will detect an anomaly. We will have minutes at best." "Okay," I said, rubbing my chin. "So just to clarify, you do have a plan this time, right?" She was silent. "Right." More silence. I groaned. "Ivil, please tell me we didn't just risk everything for a chip we don't even know how to use." She exhaled sharply. "I am working on it." "Fantastic. I love having my life in the hands of an improvising alien." She ignored me. The world's worst tutorial. After several hours of intense silence, punctuated only by my occasional humming and Ivil threatening to strangle me, she finally had something. "We must test its function," she announced. I sat up. "Great, how?" She held up the chip. "It must be inserted into the primary access panel outside the cell." I blinked. "That's outside the cell?" "Yes, the cell we're inside." She gave me an unimpressed look. "I am aware." I spread my hands, not to be a downer, but the door is kind of closed. She tilted her head. "You are flexible." "Okay. You will reach through the bars." I frowned. "What am I, a raccoon?" She ignored my protest and stood. "Come, we will test it now." With a sigh, I dragged myself to the cell door. Ivil pressed the chip into my palm, then nodded toward the tiny control panel just outside the bars. I stretched my arm through the gap. "All right, let's see." My fingertips barely brushed the panel. I grunted, shifting my weight. "Just give me a sec." Ivil watched in silence as I wiggled, twisted, and contorted my body in ways that would make a yoga instructor proud. Finally, my fingers managed to fit the chip into the access slot. A soft beep echoed from the panel. I froze. Was that good? Was that a good beep? Ivil frowned. "I do not know." We both stared at the panel. A pause, then, intrusion detected, security protocols activated. A loud klaxon blared through the hallway. I groaned. "Oh, come on." Ivil grabbed my collar and yanked me back as the cell's internal defenses activated. Sparks erupted from the control panel and a bright blue energy field slammed into place over the bars. I collapsed onto the floor with a huff. I'm going to take a wild guess and say that didn't work. Ivil exhaled slowly. "We may need another approach." "Oh, now we need another approach." She ignored me again. The guards arrive and I almost die. Again. Heavy footsteps thundered down the hall. Moments later, 2 guards stormed in, weapons raised. One of them, a particularly burly guy with a face like a bad sculpture, pointed at us. "Step away from the door." I raised my hands. "You got it, boss." Evil, of course, remained perfectly still. The other guard, a leaner woman with a no-nonsense expression, narrowed her eyes. "What did you do?" I plastered on my most innocent smile. "Who, me? Nothing, just, stretching." "Stretching? Yeah, got to keep the muscles loose." I flexed dramatically. "Prison fitness is important." Neither of them looked convinced. The burly guard scowled and tapped his wrist console. "Security breach was traced to this cell. Someone tried to override the system." I gasped. "Wow, that's crazy." The female guard crossed her arms. "You expect us to believe that wasn't you?" I nodded earnestly. "Absolutely." She turned to Evil. "And you?" Evil tilted her head. "Would you believe me if I said it was the human?" I shot her a glare. The guards exchanged glances, then, to my horror, the burly one reached for his baton. "Looks like we'll have to teach you both a lesson." "Oh, fantastic," I muttered. "Another beating, just what I needed." The guard stepped forward. And then Evil moved. It happened so fast I barely saw it. 1 second she was standing still. The next she was right in front of him, grabbing his wrist and twisting. There was a sickening crack. The guard howled, stumbling back. Evil snatched his baton, whirled, and slammed the female guard in the side with bone-shattering force. The woman hit the ground hard, gasping for breath. I blinked. "Oh." Evil turned to me, eyes blazing. "We go now." "Right, good idea." I scrambled to my feet as Evil yanked the security chip from the panel and jammed it into the fallen guard's wrist console. A soft beep and the energy field vanished. The cell door slid open. I exhaled. That was easier than I expected. Evil grabbed my arm and dragged me into the corridor. "Do not celebrate yet." As if on cue, alarms blared throughout the prison. "Alert, prisoners have escaped, all units respond." I sighed. "Great." Evil tossed me the baton. "You will need this." I caught it, staring at her. "So, do you actually have a plan now?" She smirked. "For once human," she said. "Yes." And then we ran. Running through a high-security prison while alarms blared and heavily armed guards stormed the corridors was, shockingly, not on my bucket list. But here I was, bolting down a cold metal hallway, trying not to trip over my own feet while Evil moved like a shadow beside me, her golden eyes scanning for threats. I clutched the stolen baton in one hand, my heart hammering. "Okay, so what's the plan?" "Escape." "Great plan, really inspired. Any details?" She yanked me behind a corner just as a squad of guards sprinted past, their rifles raised. I pressed against the wall, trying not to breathe too loudly. Evil whispered, "We need a ship." I nodded. Cool, just one little problem. This place is a prison. Pretty sure they don't keep an escape shuttle labeled for convenient breakouts." She smirked. "No, but they do have supply ships." I frowned. "Wait, you actually planned for this?" "I observe." "And what did you observe?" Her eyes flicked to a ventilation shaft at the end of the hall. "That." I followed her gaze, then groaned. "Oh no, no way, if you're about to say what I think you're about to say." "We go through the vents." I sighed. "Of course we do." The moment I climbed into the vent, I realized something: prison ventilation systems, not designed for comfort. I wriggled through the tight metal space, elbows scraping, knees aching. Okay, I just want to say this is officially the least dignified escape I've ever been a part of. Evil crawled ahead, moving with a predator's grace. "You have been part of many escapes." "Not exactly, but I've seen a lot of them in movies, and this is like bottom tier." She ignored me. The air was thick with dust, and the metal groaned under our weight. I tried not to think about how many other desperate prisoners had probably crawled through this exact shaft before me, most of whom had probably been caught. After what felt like an eternity, I whispered, "Are we almost there?" Evil stopped. I nearly crashed into her. She peered through the slats of a vent cover. "We are above the docking bay." I perked up, oh great, let's. She held up a hand, guards. I swallowed, less great. Peering through the grate, I saw them, 4 security officers patrolling the docking area. Beyond them, a large, ugly cargo shuttle sat on the landing pad, its engines still cooling. I glanced at Yvel. How are we supposed to get past them? She considered, distraction. I stared. You do realize my distractions tend to involve me getting punched, right? She nodded, yes. Fantastic. The plan was simple. Step 1, get the guards' attention. Step 2, hope they're dumb enough to fall for it. Step 3, profit. Yvel kicked open the vent grate, dropping gracefully onto a stack of crates below. I, on the other hand, fell. I landed with an undignified oof on the floor, groaning. The guards whirled. There, one of them shouted. I bolted upright, throwing my hands in the air. Wait, don't shoot, I surrender. The guards hesitated. One of them, a burly guy with a scar across his nose, squinted at me. Wait a second, you're the prisoner who faked food poisoning. I pointed at him. See, you do remember me, that's so flattering. Why are you out of your cell? I grinned sheepishly. Funny story, actually, I was just. Yvel struck. She leapt from behind the crates, moving in a blur. In the space of 3 seconds, 2 guards were on the ground, one clutching his gut, the other unconscious. The remaining 2 aimed their weapons, but Yvel was faster. She spun, kicked the rifle from one guard's hands, then drove her knee into his chest. The last guard, a wiry woman with a cybernetic arm, lunged for an alarm. I panicked. Without thinking, I swung my stolen baton, cracking it against the alarm panel. Sparks flew. The guard froze, hand hovering over the now useless console. I grinned. Oh wow, that actually worked. Yvel grabbed her by the collar, yanked her forward, and headbutted her. She crumpled. I blinked. Was that necessary? She was reaching for a weapon. I glanced down. Sure enough, the guard's fingers were inches from a stun baton. I let out a breath. Okay, fair. With the guards down, we sprinted toward the cargo shuttle. I slammed the access panel. Nothing happened. I turned to Yvel. Please tell me you know how to hotwire a spaceship. She strode past me, reached under the control panel, and pulled out a bundle of wires. Stand back. I obeyed. With the skill of someone who had absolutely done this before, Yvel twisted 2 wires together. Sparks jumped. The shuttle hummed to life. I gawked. That was disturbingly easy. She smirked. Your prisons are not as secure as you think. Before I could argue, the docking bay doors slammed open. A dozen guards poured in, weapons raised. I winced. Oh right, that's bad. Yvel grabbed my arm, yanking me into the shuttle. Inside. I didn't argue. As I scrambled into the cockpit, she leapt into the pilot's seat, fingers dancing across the controls. The guards opened fire. Energy blasts rattled against the hull. I gripped the chair. Yvel, maybe hurry. She muttered something in Zari that I was pretty sure translated to be silent or I will throw you out the airlock. The engines roared to life. The shuttle lurched forward. The guards scattered as we blasted through the docking bay, hurtling toward the force field separating the prison from open space. I pointed wildly. That's still up, that's still up. Yvel punched a button. A torpedo shot from the ship's underbelly, colliding with the control tower. The force field flickered, then dropped. Yvel slammed the throttle. The shuttle shot into space, leaving the prison behind. I collapsed into my seat, gasping. We did it. Yvel let out a slow breath. But before we could celebrate, the ship's warning klaxons blared. A massive battleship loomed ahead. I winced. So what's plan B? Yvel stared at the screen, then to my absolute horror she smirked. We fight. The enemy battleship loomed ahead, a monstrous silhouette against the backdrop of space. Even with the prison shrinking in the distance behind us, our situation hadn't exactly improved. I tightened my grip on the armrests. So just to clarify, when you said we fight, you meant? Ivil's hands moved over the control panel with practiced precision. We fight. I exhaled slowly. Fantastic, love that for us. The ship's proximity alarm screamed, and before I could even process what was happening, the battleship opened fire. A barrage of plasma shots streaked through the void. I braced for impact, but Ivil yanked the controls, throwing the shuttle into a wild barrel roll. The incoming blast skimmed past us so close I felt the heat through the hull. I flailed, "Could you warn me next time?" "No." More shots came. Ivil twisted the ship again, making my stomach lurch. I clutched my seat, struggling to breathe. Okay, maybe fighting a warship in a stolen cargo shuttle isn't our best plan. She didn't look up. "Would you prefer to surrender?" I scoffed. "Yeah, no, that sounds worse." "Then do something useful." I blinked. "Like what?" She pointed. "Weapon system, activate it." I followed her gaze to the side console. It was covered in buttons, switches, and symbols that might as well have been ancient runes. I hesitated. "You do realize I have no idea how to use this, right?" Ivil's eyes narrowed. "Then learn quickly." I gulped and started pressing things. The first button I hit turned on the windshield wipers. The second button dimmed the cockpit lights. The third button played a cheerful voice that rang through the speakers. "Welcome to the Glacia Industries Cargo Model 7, your trusted partner in interstellar transportation. Would you like to hear a safety demonstration?" Ivil shot me a look that could melt planets. I slammed another button. A pair of laser turrets unfolded from the ship's underbelly. Ivil smirked. "Good, now fire." I gulped. "Oh sure, let me just—" I squinted at the controls. Which one's the trigger?" A plasma shot rocked the ship, sending us into a tailspin. I flailed wildly and slammed my fist on the panel. The turrets fired, sending bright blue beams straight at the enemy ship. They missed by a lot. I winced. "Oops." Ivil growled something in her native tongue. I had a feeling it wasn't polite. The battleship returned fire. More blasts shrieked past us, close enough to make the hull shudder. I scrambled to adjust my aim. Okay, let me just— I twisted a dial and squeezed every trigger I could find. The turrets unloaded. This time the shots hit their mark. The enemy ship's shields flickered. I whooped. "Huh, did you see that? I actually—" Ivil yanked the ship into another hard turn. I smacked my head against the side panel. I groaned. "Ow, okay, I'm less excited now." She pointed at the battleship. "Their shields are weakened, target the engines." I blinked. "Right, target the engines, just got to—" I squinted at the console. "So which one's the targeting system?" Ivil inhaled sharply. Then she grabbed the console, adjusted the aim herself, and pressed the correct button. I threw up my hands. "Oh, so that's the button, good to know." The next barrage of shots struck true, a direct hit to the enemy ship's left engine. The battleship shuddered, then exploded in a spectacular fireball. I stared, mouth hanging open. "Oh." Ivil exhaled. "That worked." I gawked at the fiery wreckage drifting into the void. "I can't believe that actually worked." Ivil smirked. "You doubt me?" "Not you, me, I was the one shooting." She arched an eyebrow. "Then perhaps you are not as useless as you appear." I gasped, placing a hand over my heart. "Was that a compliment? Ivil, are you warming up to me?" She rolled her eyes. "No." "Wow, that was fast." Before she could respond, the ship's warning system blared again. I groaned. "Oh, what now?" I glanced at the scanner. My stomach dropped. More ships were coming, bigger ships. I winced. "So plan C." Ivil was already punching coordinates into the nav system. I frowned. "Where are we going?" She didn't answer. Then the ship lurched into hyperspace and the starfield blurred into a streaking tunnel of light. I exhaled, slumping back. "Okay, cool, we escaped for now." Ivil didn't respond. She was staring at the screen. Her golden eyes, usually so sharp and calculating, were distant. I frowned. "Hey, what's wrong?" She hesitated, then in a quiet voice she said, "We are not safe yet." I stiffened. "Who are they?" Ivel's jaw tightened. "Not prison guards," she muttered, "not police." I narrowed my eyes. "Then who?" She hesitated again, then softly, "Hunters." I felt a chill. "Hunting you?" I asked. She turned to me, her gaze was unreadable, then she said simply, "Yes." The streaking tunnel of hyperspace flickered, colors rippling like liquid glass. I gripped the edge of my seat, still trying to process the last 10 minutes. We had just blown up a warship, barely escaped with our lives, and now Ivel had dropped the bombshell that we were being hunted. I exhaled. "So you want to elaborate on that whole hunters thing, or are we just going to sit here marinating in existential dread?" Ivel's golden eyes remained fixed on the control panel. "They are Zari enforcers, my people." I blinked. "Wait, you mean your own species is after you?" She nodded. I leaned back, rubbing my temples. "Okay, I need a second to process how utterly backwards that is. So you were locked up in a human prison, but it's your own people who are hunting you." A long silence stretched between us, then finally she spoke. "I was supposed to be executed." I froze. Ivel continued, her voice steady but laced with something I couldn't quite place. "The humans did not know what I was. To them, I was an off-worlder who had violated airspace, but to the Zari, I am something worse." I swallowed, "And that would be?" She turned her gaze, meeting mine. "A traitor." I blinked. "Oof, that's pretty heavy. What exactly did you do?" Her expression darkened. "I refused an order." I hesitated. "That's it, just one order." She exhaled. "Not just an order, an extermination." I stiffened. She continued, voice quieter now. "There was a colony, small, defenseless. A military experiment had failed there, leaving a pathogen that could spread if left unchecked. My commanders ordered complete destruction." I frowned. "Wait, so they wanted you to wipe out the entire colony?" She nodded. "Men, women, children." I refused. I swallowed. She tilted her head. "You disapprove." I scoffed. "Are you kidding? I respect the hell out of that. I ran a hand through my hair. "That's rough. Your own people wanted you to commit genocide, and when you said no, they decided you were the problem." She gave a slow nod. I let out a breath. "Man, and I thought my rap sheet was bad." She arched an eyebrow. "You were arrested for smuggling kitchen supplies." "Illegally smuggling kitchen supplies," I corrected, raising a finger. "That's a serious offense in some circles." For the first time, a tiny, almost imperceptible smile flickered across her face. It vanished just as quickly. "The hunters will not stop," she said. "They will track me." I glanced at the hyperspace readings. "How long before they find us?" She hesitated. "A day, perhaps less." I let out a long, slow breath, and then, before I could stop myself, I said, "So what if we make them stop?" She frowned. "Explain." I leaned forward. "You said they won't stop hunting you, so why not give them a reason to stop?" She eyed me wearily. "And how do you propose we do that?" I grinned. "By making you disappear." It was a terrible plan, which of course meant we were definitely going through with it. Step 1, find an asteroid field. Step 2, stage a ship explosion. Step 3, hope the hunters bought it. We dropped out of hyperspace near an uncharted debris field, probably the shattered remains of some unlucky moon. It was perfect. Ivel guided the ship through the wreckage, weaving between floating boulders the size of small buildings. I tightened my harness. "I just want to say, for the record, this plan is insane." Ivel's hands moved deftly across the controls. "Do you have a better one?" I hesitated. "Well, no." "Then be silent." I rolled my eyes. We reached the perfect spot, a dense cluster of asteroids where no ship would be able to scan properly. Ivel killed the autopilot, then, with eerie calm, she activated the ship's self-destruct sequence. I flailed. Whoa, hold up, we live here." She grabbed my arm, not for much longer. A hatch opened, inside a tiny two-person escape pod. I blinked. Oh, I cleared my throat. Yeah, no, that makes sense. We climbed in, sealing the door behind us. The countdown beeped through the shuttle's comms, 10 seconds. I exhaled, just checking, this pod does have an oxygen supply, right? She ignored me. The pod launched. We shot into the asteroid field just as the stolen shuttle exploded behind us in a massive fireball. The shock wave sent our tiny pod spinning wildly, and for a moment I was sure we were going to smash into an asteroid and die anyway. But Evil grabbed the controls, steadying our descent. The pod drifted into a quiet orbit around a large asteroid hidden from any sensors. I let out a breath. Well, that was terrifying. She didn't respond. We sat in silence for a while, the pod floating through empty space. Then I said, so what now? She exhaled, now we wait. And after that, she turned, studying me. For the first time since we met, there was no suspicion in her gaze, no weariness, just quiet contemplation. Then softly, we start over. I blinked, start over. She nodded, you are a fugitive, so am I. We cannot return to what we once were, so we will become something new. I hesitated, together. She met my gaze, a long pause, then finally, yes. I smiled, guess I'm stuck with you then. She smirked, it would seem so. I leaned back, staring at the stars beyond the glass. For the first time in forever, I wasn't a prisoner and neither was she. We were just two nobodies drifting through the cosmos, two survivors, two free people. The end.